After a 13-year playoff drought starting in 2007, the San Diego Padres have made the playoffs 3 out of the past 5 seasons. Just narrowly losing to the World Series winning Dodgers last year and making it to the NLCS in 2022, there's definitely been a tradition of success here in San Diego for the past 5 seasons. This team has some of the best top-tier talent in the game on any roster. A star-studded infield, an incredible top of the rotation, and a really solid back of the bullpen. The Padres definitely have the star talent to make it a long ways in October. But given a roster with a lot of turnover, can the Padres do it again in 2025? If you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel. 5 days until opening day. Let's get into a breakdown of the 2025 San Diego Padres organization. We'll get started with some team ranks from the 2024 season. All of these are completely objective. My rankings formula is in the description of this video. And a really solid Major League roster for the Padres last year, built up by this front office. An incredible lineup rotation and bullpen last year, 2 really key bullpen additions at the trade deadline. The defense was about middling in the league, but that's not something that has necessarily been an issue for San Diego the past couple seasons. Unfortunately, because of the cost of building an incredible Major League roster, their farm system has definitely taken a hit. Specifically last season, a lot of prospects that were really solid in this organization traded at the deadline, but it's not without a couple real solid pieces on this farm system. They come in at 25th in my rankings, 18th ranked Major League Pitchers, and 28th on the minor league hitters, although there's 2 top 100 minor league hitters in their system. Mike Shildt is the manager here in San Diego, came over last season after Bob Melvin left to the Giants, and a really good year out of him last season, 93-69 in San Diego. Some really solid bullpen decisions for him last year, and I think he did a really good job with the platoon options. The president of baseball operations here is AJ Preller. His 11th season in San Diego, I think he's done a pretty good job. A guy that's known to go out and make a lot of trades and really overhaul a Major League roster as much as possible. I mentioned last season they were 93-69, second in the National League West behind, of course, the Dodgers, 4th in the National League in record. Their payroll was $169 million last year, and even though they lost a couple of guys in free agency, it did go up this year to $208 million. The PECOTA projection system has them going 87-75 and sneaking into the playoffs this year. Definitely one of the more conservative prediction models that you will find when it comes to wins and losses. Not very high on the high teams in the league, but they still do have this Padres team making the playoffs, a 60.8% playoff chance in 2025. Unfortunately, because of one of the free agent signings, they do only have 2 top 100 picks next year, but I think they've done a pretty solid job drafting the past couple seasons. In terms of top contracts, they definitely have a few. Manny Machado leads the way, $31.8 million on the average annual salary. Xander Bogaerts just brought over a couple years ago, $25.5 million, and Fernando Tatis Jr. here on that big time extension, $24.3 million in 2025. Their last playoff appearance was last year in 2024, won their first round series against the Atlanta Braves and fell just short to the Los Angeles Dodgers, who would go on to win the World Series. I was not aware of this, but their park factor is 96, so they're the 28th ranked stadium in park factor, meaning there's only 2 teams that have bigger pitcher parks than San Diego. So not a huge run scoring environment in San Diego, but they do have a lot of really solid offensive players to offset that. And in terms of organization success, not a ton there last season, although the Lake Elsinore Storm of A-ball 71-58. All 3 of the other minor league teams in their organization, not including summer and fall leagues and the complex league, under 500. Let's get into season storylines, and I'll explain the first one I have on the screen here, high variance. I think there's a lot of things that can go different with this 2025 season for San Diego, depending on how they start. There were a lot of trade rumors, guys like Dylan Cease and Luiz Arraez into this offseason. There's some ownership issues going on, and it sounds like cost cutting is at the forefront of some of the decision making. If San Diego doesn't get off to a very good start this season, I could definitely see guys like Dylan Cease and Luiz Arraez getting traded, but I think if they get off to a good start, they'll keep these guys through the year and let them play out their contracts in San Diego. These next 2 storylines are just going to be completely based around the depth of this team. The depth of the lineup is not great. Couple NRIs on the bench, minor league deals brought in this offseason, and Gavin Sheets, although he's had an incredible spring training, was brought in from the White Sox on a minor league deal this offseason to be their starting DH. Can guys like Eguy, Rosario, and Elias, Diaz have really good seasons to make that bottom of the lineup pop? And can guys like Kyle Hart, Randy Vasquez, and Steven Kolek have good seasons in the back of that rotation to really push this rotation back to the success that it had in 2024? It'll definitely be a tall task, especially when guys like Yu Darvish are already going to start the season on the IL, but I do believe in a couple of these guys. We'll get to them later in this video. Definitely a big offseason in terms of both additions and subtractions, but a lot of big guys lost, so I'll start there. Jurickson Profar, an incredible season for the Padres last year, 4.3 WAR, over to Atlanta in free agency. Ha-Seong Kim, really the lifeline of this infield ever since he came over to Tampa Bay on a 2-year deal. Tanner Scott traded for at the deadline, unfortunately over to the division rival Dodgers. One of the better left-handed relievers in all of baseball. Kyle Higashioka, a backup catcher, had a pretty solid season in San Diego last year, 1.5 WAR. Donovan Solano over to Seattle, a contact-first infielder. Martin Perez, a starting pitcher, gave you some innings last year in San Diego after a trade. And then David Peralta, still a free agent, but had some pretty solid hitting numbers last season. A couple offseason additions I do really like, and we'll get started with Nick Pivetta. 4 years, $55 million, kind of a weird deal. He has opt-outs after every single year in this deal. So if we get one good season out of Pivetta, I would expect him to opt out of that contract. A really fun lefty-righty outfield platoon in Jason Heyward and Connor Joe, both brought in on the same day, both for the same deal. Heyward will hit against right-handed pitching. Joe will hit against left-handed pitching. Kyle Hart, a really interesting one, came over from the Korean baseball organization this offseason. Just incredible numbers over there after not doing a whole lot in the majors. Definitely competing for a starting spot in this rotation. And then Ron Marinaccio, not currently projected to be on the roster, but projected .1 WAR this season in a trade with the White Sox. Before I go over specifics in this lineup, I'll talk about weighted runs created plus really quickly. You'll be seeing this a lot throughout the video. Just think of it as a general offensive statistic that measures how productive you are as a hitter. League average for the stat is 100. Everything above or below it is the percent better or worse that you were than a league average hitter that season. So for example, Luiz Arraez is projected to be 15% better than league average next year, and that's where we'll get started here. Luiz Arraez, the first baseman, apparently a very polarizing guy in baseball, but a really solid contact hitter, one of the worst defenders in the game, unfortunately, so he's not going to bring you a lot of value in that area, but a really solid hitter, a guy who's been good every year of his career offensively. The star of this team, one of the biggest stars in baseball, Fernando Tatis Jr., projected to be 45% better than league average, 37 homers and almost 20 steals, just under 6 wins above replacement. Jackson Merrill, one of the best stories in the game, an incredible rookie season last year. He's projected 22 weighted runs created plus, 25 homers, 15 steals, and 5 WAR. If you're watching this video, you know the name Manny Machado, been around forever in baseball, 21% better than league average on the projections, just about 30 homers. Jake Cronenworth just signed a big-time extension last offseason, projected to be 4% better than league average, moving back to second base full-time. Xander Bogaerts, kind of a scary year from him last year offensively, but the projections do have him taking a step back up. 10% better than league average, 17 homers and 13 steals. Still a really solid defender at shortstop. And then an interesting bottom of this lineup. I mentioned the lineup depth. 3 guys in Gavin Sheets, Jason Heyward, and Elias Diaz, all projected to be under league average as hitters. Although I think the Padres are going to get really platoony in this lineup. This is the projected lineup against right-handed pitching. I would expect guys like Connor Joe, Eguy, Rosario, and Jose Iglesias to get a lot of at-bats against lefties. Also, not going to take a huge dive onto Eguy, Rosario, but I really like the prospects of him being a good hitter in this lineup in 2025. Unfortunately, this rotation is going to start the season without Yu Darvish. He's going to be on the injured list. Get the 2025 season rolling, but he will be back at some point this season, and that still leaves a pretty solid rotation. Michael King and Dylan Cease, both top 30 at their position in projected WAR this year, both projected a 3.46 ERA. Cease is projected to give a bit more in the innings department. That's why his WAR is a little higher. Nick Pivetta, their big free agent acquisition this offseason, projected 155 innings, just over a 4 ERA and just over 2 WAR. And then 2 question marks at the back of this rotation. Steven Kolek, a guy who came out of the bullpen exclusively last season, stretching back out into a starter. Do like a lot of his metrics. We'll go into him later. And then Randy Vasquez, brought in the Juan Soto trade last offseason. A really big part of this rotation, so I will mention that Vasquez, King, Manning and Brito were all brought in that same trade. Expect Vasquez to definitely get in some innings for this rotation in 2025. He gave you a lot last year. Matt Waldron, the knuckleballer, Omar Cruz, Luis Patino, and Johnny Brito will also give contributions to this rotation. I think this definitely has the potential to be the best bullpen that we've gone over so far in this series. An incredible top three here: Robert Suarez, Jason Adam, and Jeremiah Estrada. Estrada, one of my favorite young pitchers in the game, a really solid 2024. Robert Suarez, one of the best fastballs in the league. Jason Adam, just incredible stats from him last season. Very interesting for this Padres group, and something that a lot of other teams don't have: 4 lefties in this bullpen. Adrian Morejon, a really solid season last year. Yuki Matsui, I think another really good pitcher. Wandy Peralta has been very good in the past, a big time changeup thrower, but really struggled when he came over to San Diego last year. And then Kyle Hart, a guy I think is going to start a lot of games, brought over on a 1-year deal from Korea this offseason. Alec Jacobs, some really solid metrics on him. I'll go over him more when we get into the bullpen section, but I like him a lot. I think this is a very solid bullpen here for San Diego. Before I go into specifics here, I'll go over some of the numbers on the screens really quickly. Baseball Savant cards are going to have some hard hit metrics, some plate discipline metrics, and some expected stats. Alongside defensive and base running metrics, the percentiles on the left side and the right side of the screen for this card are going to be offensive base running and defensive run values by Baseball Savant. WAR per 162 the last 3 seasons is going to be on there, alongside weighted runs created plus. Remember, league average is 100. And then WOBA, weighted on base average. Think about it as a way of measuring how you get on base. Everything is weighted differently in this calculation, meaning a homer is weighed more than a triple, which is weighed more than a double, etc. Just a better job at measuring the ways that you get on base than on base percentage can give you. And 2 pretty opposite sides of the spectrum here in Elias Diaz and Luis Campusano. Diaz, a great defensive catcher, not incredible in the blocks category, but incredible framing, good pop time, really good at caught stealing above average. Offensively, not the greatest, 19% below league average last year. He has had some better seasons offensively in the past, but an age 34 catcher will bring you a lot of value against right-handed pitching though. A 721 OPS against them last year, just about league average. Diaz, formerly a Colorado Rocky and a one-time All-Star, a solid offensive season in 2023, a 725 OPS, 14 home runs. Last year, a bit of a step back in some of the metrics and the results. Came over to San Diego after being let go last season, and 12 games in San Diego, had a 721 OPS and 1 homer. Took a big step forward in the fielding department last year. The fielding run value for him in the past had not been very good, but last season generated a 4 run value from the defensive side, got a lot better with the framing last year, and I think that ends up being a pretty big positive for him. A catcher who can do a lot of things defensively is going to stay in the league for a long time, and Elias Diaz really figured that out last year. A really weird year for Luis Campusano last season. Some of the metrics still really love him. He's a guy that's not going to strike out a lot. The K rate is way down. Hard hit numbers just took a pretty big step backwards in 2024. A guy who's not going to bring you really any value defensively. First percentile in defensive run value. And the sprint speed is very down. Not bringing you a lot in the base running category either. Needs to be a really solid hitter, and he just wasn't that last year. 91 games and 83 weighted runs created plus, 8 homers. Still only 26 years old. A great season in 2023 for Campusano. 174 plate appearances, 7 homers, and 847 OPS. When Campusano is clicking, a really good bat to ball guy. The expected batting average of that 2023 season, 305. Doesn't strike out, doesn't whiff a lot. Last year specifically, a big step back against fastballs. A 273 WOBA in 2024 compared to a 385 in 2023. I think there's definitely a lot left in Luis Campusano, but I don't know if I can say he has the high-end potential that I thought that he had in the past. Interesting catching group here in San Diego. At first base, Luiz Arraez, a guy that I mentioned as being really polarizing in the earlier stages of this video, but I think it's really easy to describe Luiz Arraez as a hitter. Arraez is the optimal version of himself at the plate. A guy who's going to hit the ball very well. He doesn't strike out at all. He doesn't whiff at all. Every single season, the expected batting average is going to be way up there in the league, 100th percentile. He just doesn't hit the ball hard, and that's something that he doesn't try to do. You see the bat speed is way down there. A guy that derives a lot of his on base from the hitting, the walk rate down there at the 3rd percentile in baseball. Definitely not the best hitter in the league, in my opinion, as some people are trying to say, but I think a really good one. A guy that gets on base really solid and is a great table setter for guys like Machado and Tatis in this lineup. Unfortunately, last year for Arraez, a pretty solid step back in a lot of departments. 862 OPS in 23, a 738 last season. Even though he's not a big time hard hit guy, guy, the hard hit metrics took a huge step back last year, and that led to the lack of production compared to that 23 season. A 354 hitter in 2023, 393 on base. A guy who doesn't really have a defensive position, kind of going back and forth between first base and second base his entire career. More of a suitable DH in my opinion. But I don't think he's going to be able to play that here in San Diego. When he's right, one of the best contact hitters and on-base guys in the entire league in Luiz Arraez. Jake Cronenworth here back at second base full-time, 31 years old, was playing a little bit of third base in the past, 5% better than league average as a hitter last year, has a big-time deal, does a lot of good things offensively, not chasing or whiffing at a lot of pitches. The hard hit rates are just about league average in almost every area. Pretty similar hitter over the past 3 seasons, although a bit of a step up in 2024, 714 OPS that season compared to a 690 and then a 722 in 22. Posted by far the best hard hit metrics of his entire career last season, and the expected stats liked him a lot more. I think we're seeing a step up from Jake Cronenworth as a hitter, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that be an exponential rise. 31 years old, a guy that got a little worse second half last year, 649 OPS compared to a 752 in the first half. But I think I have pretty high hopes for Jake Cronenworth in 2025, just a really big rise in the hard hit numbers last season. I expect him to have a good year offensively. Manny Machado here at third base, not the player that he used to be as much offensively, but still a big time bat in this lineup. Just under 30 homers last year, 152 games, 22% better than league average. The hard hit numbers for him are still very good. All the expected numbers really like him. He's crushing the base, while the average exit velocity and hard hit rates are still way up there. Still a solid fielder. Although he wasn't the fielder that he has been in the past last season, 97th percentile outs above average in 2023, last year just 38th percentile, but I think still a really solid player, maybe not worth the money necessarily, but a real good bat in this lineup. I think we're starting to see a bit of a regression over that long period for Manny Machado, but I will say the hard hit metrics compared to his 2022 season with an 897 OPS, 32 homers are very similar to what they were last year. Actually even better in a lot of areas, and he took a big step forward from 2023, so I think we might see a bit of a reversion to that 2022 season. I'm a big time Manny Machado fan. I just love the way that he plays the game. Watched him a lot when he was with Baltimore. A guy kind of gunning for a Hall of Fame case at this point in his career. Big time first half, second half splits guy. Pre-All-Star 741 OPS, post-All-Star an 876. More homers and less plate appearances in the second half, so definitely a great sign for Machado there. Let's see if he can keep that rolling into 2025 and be that hitter that we've seen in 2022 and earlier. Another guy here at shortstop that we've seen some regression with in the past couple years is Xander Bogaerts, and one that I think I'm a bit more scared about long term than Machado. Did only play 111 games last year, so not a full season out of Bogaerts, but he has been very valuable. A 6.8 WAR season his last year in Boston, but below a league average hitter last year, and you can really see why the hard hit numbers have tanked in 2024. Still really solid defensively, a really good base runner, and it doesn't strike out very often, so he can definitely be a high floor player, gonna bring you some WAR every season. A 4-time All-Star for Boston, and a guy brought over here on a giant contract. Well above league average in 2023, a 790 OPS and 19 homers. Although the metrics weren't great for him last year, and we saw that kind of continue into 2024. Dealt with injuries last year for really the first extended stretch in a while. Played some second base for San Diego. Sounds like is going to be making that shift back to a full-time shortstop in 25. The hard hit rates are a bit scary for me, but I do think there's a floor. I mentioned the K rates, the whiff rates, the chase rates are not very high. So I think that's definitely something you can build on as a Padres fan. If you're looking for Bogaerts to be that 833 OPS guy that he was in 2022, I don't know if that's going to be there, but I do think he can be a solid defender, a real solid base runner, and can bring you a lot of floor in this lineup. Jason Heyward here in left field, he's going to be mostly into a platoon with Connor Joe. I'll go over in the bench. He was about league average, 94 weighted runs created plus last season, 10 homers, 111 games for him. Just about a league average defender, a bit above it in left field, 35 years old. He's been around forever in the majors, long time Atlanta Braves, Chicago Cub. My guess would be that it's in the San Diego organization's philosophy for this season to never give him an at-bat against left-handed pitching, just really solid against righties, and I think that's where they can put him in advantageous situations. I will mention a great 2023 season at age 33, an 813 OPS and 15 homers and 377 plate appearances. The strikeout rates and the whiff rates were pretty solid that year. He was actually well above average as a fielder, and an 818 OPS against right-handed pitching that season. If he can do that in 2025, I think the Padres feel really good about this one one-year deal. One of the biggest rising superstars in the entire game in Jackson Merrill, his first season last year in the majors, had never played center field before. A longtime shortstop in the minors, went to center and was one of the best outfielders in baseball in outs above average last year. 30% better than league average as a hitter, 24 homers, 16 steals, and 5.6 WAR. The expected numbers love him. He was great really everywhere. The only thing that he isn't incredible at is the walk rate, but a guy that still gets on base because he hits the ball a lot and he's going to slug a ton. Merrill was a number 12 prospect by MLB Pipeline heading into the season, and he built on that, being the runner-up in Rookie of the Year to just Paul Skeens. Got way better down the stretch last season, 945 OPS in the second half compared to a 745 in the first half. He was incredible in high leverage moments as well. His OPS went through the roof in those moments. A 949 OPS in late and close games. I think the only step forward for Merrill can be to hit left-handed pitching a bit better, just a 646 OPS against them last season, but you can't really nitpick with Jackson Merrill, a rookie that had one of the better seasons at center field in baseball last year. Projected again to be well up there in center field WAR. One of the more fun guys to watch in the league, a guy that rises in really special moments, and a great player here in Jackson Merrill. Following up one of the best center fielders in the game with one of the best right fielders in the game, Fernando Tatis Jr. He's going to be a Padre for a long time here on a big time contract extension, moved from shortstop to right field a couple seasons ago, and has been definitely a positive in that area. After the steroid suspension and long injury in 2022 and 2023, we didn't really see the Tatis of the past get back, but we definitely saw flashes last year. The expected numbers are off the charts for him. Didn't really catch up to it with his actual stats, but still 35% better than league average in 102 games. I would expect Fernando Tatis Jr. to make a quantum leap. Shout out to Pat Murphy this season. Tatis's first 3 seasons in the majors, 969, 937, and 975 OPS, 42 homers in that 2021 year. And I will say, the metrics are very similar to that season that he had in 2021. I think Tatis has really been dealing with some bad luck from batted balls the past couple years. You see that in all of his expected stats. The only thing that really was a struggle for him last season was the hitting against lefties, which has never been an issue in the past. 683 OPS for him last year against left-handed pitching. Just to throw a hint out there when I do my season predictions, I think I'm going to have Fernando Tatis as my MVP. Love Tatis. I think there's going to be a big season ahead of him in 2025. At DH, Gavin Sheets brought over from the White Sox this offseason. A really solid spring training for him. Some really good numbers there. Has really been crushing the ball. The hard hit rates are a lot better, but has never really given value in the major leagues. Negative 0.9 WAR per 162, 12% worse than league average last year. And he was out there almost every day, 137 games. The metrics have never loved Sheets either. This is really the first time in this little spring training that we're seeing some solid hard hit numbers from him. Definitely took a step forward in the plate discipline areas last year though, so I think that's a positive, and I think there's a reason why the Padres brought him in to be their DH. If nothing, I think he's going to hit a lot against right-handed pitching, and he could definitely be a positive there. So Gavin Sheets will be your opening day DH against right-handers. On the bench, 3 guys that I expect to play a lot this season. Connor Joe, I think him and Heyward are going to be a pretty straight platoon. Joe, a guy who hits left-handed pitching very well. He'll be in there when Heyward isn't. Jose Iglesias had a mammoth season last year for the New York Mets. 337 batting average, 37% better than league average. Mostly a second baseman at this point in his career, so I would expect him to get some run there against left-handers. Definitely not the hitter that he was last year. The metrics didn't like him as much, only 85 games, but had a really good season, and you cannot take that away from Jose Iglesias, 35 years old, the guy who's been around for a while. And then Eguy Rosario, I am very high on him going into this season. 25% better than league average last year, only 30 games, 2.4 WAR per 162, and bringing a lot of that value on the offensive side. Some of the hard hit numbers really like him this season, a guy that I would watch on the San Diego Padres roster. We'll get into the pitching section of this video, and I'll go over a couple numbers again here. Baseball Savant card is going to have a majority of the same information, hard hit numbers, plate discipline, against numbers, etc. On the right side are going to be run values again, so pitching run value, fastball, breaking, and off-speed run value. On the left side, you're going to have your pitches, miles per hour, and how often you use them. On the card, I went with WAR per season just because of some of the injuries that have been happening recently, so if there's a missed year, I accounted that into the calculation. FIP on the card stands for fielding independent pitching. Don't need to know the intricacies of it, just think about it as something that will predict ERA over a long-term sample. So for King, we would have expected his ERA last year to be closer to 3.33. Stuff Plus and Location Plus are just two models that do a really good job at encapsulating a pitcher. The Stuff Plus measures how good a pitcher's stuff is, the location, how good they are at locating pitches. League average for both of those numbers are going to be 100, just like weighted runs created plus. And we'll go into Michael King, really the crown jewel of the Juan Soto trade from 2 off seasons ago. An incredible season for him last year. He was nails for the Padres. 85th percentile in pitching run value. The off-speed pitches were awesome. That changeup one that he uses so often in the 96th percentile, and one that he really just started using more in San Diego last year. Limits hard contact exceptionally well. Will walk a guy here and there, and that's really the only flaw in his game right now. The stuff and location pretty close to league average. A guy who came out of the bullpen a majority of his career before last season. 49 appearances in 2023, only 9 starts, but a multi-inning guy out of the bullpen for the Yankees. Always had really solid metrics on his pitches and 3 really good seasons for him. 2.75 and a 2.29 ERA those past 2 years before 2024. Unfortunately for the Padres, going to be a free agent after this season, so that's definitely a decision they're going to have to make. Michael King, though, a really good number 1 in this rotation, and we're going to get into a guy that is also a number 1. Dylan Cease, 29 years old, another guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of this season. Big time step up in terms of results from him in 2024. Acquired from the Chicago White Sox, really had a tough 2023 season, and the Padres pounced on him. They got him, and he was great last year. 97th percentile in pitching run value. The strikeout stuff for him has always been incredible. 11% better than league average in the stuff plus area. Actually got pretty unlucky with the batted balls last year as well. The ERA is a bit higher than the FIP, so we would have expected his season to be a bit better even. And a lot of it is because of the slider. An incredible pitch for him. It resulted in the breaking pitches being 100th percentile in run value. Mostly a 4-seam slider guy, although he will throw 6 pitches. A 4.58 ERA in 2023 after a 2.20 in 2022, kind of right in the middle last season. I personally think he's one of the better pitchers in the entire league. The strikeout stuff is just so good for him. Made 32, 33, and 33 starts in the last 3 seasons. Added the sweeper and cutter to his repertoire last year, and that helped, I think, with a lot of his other pitches. Love Dylan Cease, a really good number 2 in San Diego. Nick Pivetta, the pride of this free agent class, 4.14 ERA last year. The stuff and location were both better than average though. Only a fastball and breaking guy, a 4-seam and a cutter for the fastball. The sweeper, curve, and slider come in there from the breaking pitches, and they just really weren't that good in run value last year. 16th percentile. Been a pretty similar pitcher the past 3 seasons. 4.14, 4.04, and a 4.56 ERA those years. Took a little bit of a shot at the bullpen in 2023 and was all right there. Transitioned back to be a starter last season, and I think that's where he's going to be with the Padres all year. I like Pivetta as a guy that could give you a lot of innings out of this rotation. One thing to expect for him, that sweeper usage to go up. It was a great pitch last year. I'm going to expect he's going to use it a lot more this season. Kind of an interesting contract. 2028 is technically his free agent year, but he has an opt-out after every single season. So if we see a good year out of Pivetta this season, probably won't see him in San Diego. Stephen Kolek, a starter turned reliever turned starter again. Some really good numbers last year. The FIP was incredible. The stuff plus and location plus both very good. I think he got really unlucky with the batted ball luck last season. Really good at inducing ground balls, not walking a ton of guys, won't get a ton of strikeouts, and that's where I think the FIP got hurt a lot. But I think he's going to be a real solid 4 guy out of this rotation. Spring training this year, 4 games, 2 starts, 12.1 innings to a 2.19 ERA, 8 strikeouts to 2 walks. Not that it matters a ton, but I think it's a good capture of what he's going to be doing this year in terms of his innings pitched. I wouldn't expect him to be a long-term starter unless he really figures that out. I think San Diego's really desperate for starting options, and I think Kolek can bring you a lot of innings at a pretty solid rate here in 2025. I'm excited for Stephen Kolek this year. And then the currently listed 5, Randy Vasquez, brought over in the Juan Soto trade 2 years ago. Pretty solid with the stuff. The location wasn't great. Numbers just really didn't like him last year. Didn't have a ton of success. 98 innings, ERA pretty high. Not a guy that's going to get many strikeouts at all or whiffs, and that really hurt him. I think he really needs to get himself to be a command pitcher. The walk rate, I think, could be a bit lower even. More of a deception guy than anything. One that throws 6 pitches, all of them over 10%. 37.2 innings with the Yankees in 2023. Did a much better job at limiting hard contact that year, and the off-speed pitches were a lot better. So I think there could be a bit of regression to the mean in 2025. I wouldn't say Randy Vasquez is a 4.87 ERA guy, but I think a bit closer to that 4.3, 4.2 ERA. I like Randy Vasquez, though, as a guy that can give you some innings and a real deception pitcher. Only 26 years old, still 3 starts in spring training, a 3.38 ERA. That'll bring us into the back end of the bullpen, and one of the better ones in baseball here for the Padres. Robert Suarez, the closer here, really solid year last year, really good stuff. Here's my fastball. Try to hit it. 71% of the time on the 4-seam fastball. We'll throw that sinker a bit and the changeup at 13%. 94th percentile on the fastball run value for Suarez. 79th overall on the pitching. The off-speed pitch wasn't great for him last year, but the fastball velo, incredible. Metrics actually took a bit of a step back, but the expected numbers were still really good for him, so that's not something I would be worried about at all. Real solid closer in Robert Suarez, one that's going to be here for a while, signed an extension with the Padres. Jason Adam, 33 years old, acquired from the Rays at the deadline last season. The numbers were outrageous for him last year, a 1.95 ERA and 73.2 innings. The FIP was a bit higher, did deal with some walk issues down the stretch, but a big time pitch guy. He's going to go out there and throw 4 pitches over 16% of the time and does have a cutter he rarely uses. The metrics for Adam were off the charts last year, 95th in pitching run value, the off-speed fastball and breaking all way up there. The whiff rate, 99th percentile, the chase rate and K rate both up there as well. Was even better when he came over to San Diego last year, a 1.01 ERA in 27 games in San Diego last season. Started throwing that fastball just a little bit more last year, and it was one of his better pitches. I like Jason Adam a lot at the back end of this bullpen. I think a closer on the majority of the teams in baseball. And I think you could say the same exact thing about Jeremiah Estrada, because man, he is nasty. 37.3% strikeout rate last season, a 207 FIP. Located his pitches really well, and they were great pitches too. 112 on the stuff plus, 113 on the location plus. Just 26 years old, and I think even should have had a better year last year. All the expected numbers are way higher than his actual results. 99th percentile in K rate, the whiff rate at 96, the chase at 93rd. The dude just misses bats at an incredible rate. The expected ERA was 2.53 last year. The expected batting average at 187. Estrada is an animal at the back end of this bullpen. I think I'm going to go out and say that he's the best 7th inning guy in the entire league, no question. The back end of this bullpen is an absolute weapon for the San Diego Padres, specifically when they get to October. And a couple names here that I like a lot as well. Adrian Morejon, incredible season last year. 2.83 ERA, 2.79 FIP, struck out 26% of the batters he faced. I think a lot of people were really waiting for that breakout season after being a pretty highly touted prospect and coming up, and he had it last year, no questions asked. Limited hard contact amongst the best guys in baseball. The breaking and off-speed pitches are definitely his bread and butter. The fastball lags a bit behind, but he still was great last year. Big-time ground ball pitcher as well. Just a really solid lefty. Another really solid lefty here in Yuki Matsui, brought over from Japan before last season. Definitely more of a strikeout guy here. The whiff rate and chase rate at 89 and 90th percentile respectively. I would expect that K rate to go up next year. His expected numbers much better than the actual numbers as well. A 2.94 expected ERA, like Yuki Matsui a lot. Alec Jacob, I was not familiar with your game. Only 14.2 innings for him last year, but the metrics are off the charts. I don't think I've seen this much red in my life since Christmas Day of 2020. The K rate, the walk rate, the barrel rate, the hard hit rate. My pick for a breakout reliever in baseball this year, I think, is Alec Jacob. Just love it. Interesting arm angle from him too. A really fun guy to watch. Wandy Peralta, a big-time changeup guy. A tough season for him last year, but he had been really solid with the Yankees. Another part of that Juan Soto trade, and a guy that I think could have a bit of a step forward this year. The whiff rates on his changeup just really took a step back, and I think that was a big part of his success. I think he's going to find that again, though. I will mention with Wandy, one of the weirder contracts in baseball. He's a 4-year extension with an opt-out after every single year. Can't say you see that very often for a reliever. And then the final lefty in this pen, technically, but I think a guy that's going to be fighting for some rotation innings this year, and Kyle Hart, brought in on a 1-year deal, was in the Korean baseball organization last year, really just changed himself as a pitcher, had some incredible numbers, 2.69 ERA, struck out just about 29% of the guys that he saw. Can't find any info on his pitch usages from last season, but I have what he had in 2023 when he was in the majors. Seems to be a majority slider fastball guy with a bit of a changeup thrown in here, but honestly not sure. One outing in spring training so far for him, he was using a sweeper a lot. 29% of the time that sweeper came in. The 4-seam fastball, and sinker make up another 40%. Only one outing I mentioned in spring training, so not sure what the plan is for Kyle Hart to start the season. Think it's a really nice story though, brought over from the KBO. We'll get right into the top prospect section as well. 2 top 100 guys in Leo, Vries, and Ethan Salas. Start with Leo here, 65 on the Baseball America grade, only 18 years old, alongside Salas, so a really young farm system. Really solid grades for Vries, 60 hit, 55 power, 55 run, and 55 field, so he's above average in almost everything. Got up to A-ball as a 17-year-old last season and was 16% better than league average. The crown jewel of the 2024 international free agent class, a switch hitting shortstop, a guy that doesn't have a ton of minor league run, but the stats are great for him in the minors. Definitely a potential high impact major league guy. Ethan Salas, the number 2 prospect in the system, was kind of anointed. He was the top prospect in the 2023 international signing class as well. Got off to a really solid start in the minors and was really accelerated through that minor league system, but had a pretty tough year last season, 25% worse than league average. His calling card is he is an incredible defender behind the plate, a 70 field and a 60 arm, really quick, compact swing, a left-handed hitter, I think a Gold Glove potential catcher and one of the better defenders in the league when he gets up. He's just really got to start hitting a little bit more to get up to the major leagues. Only 18 years old and already in Double-A though, so you love the progression from him. I think there's a lot to be excited about with Ethan Salas moving forward. And then maybe an all-name team guy here in Cash Mayfield, not currently a top 100 guy, although he was up there in the draft rankings last season. 25th overall to the Padres last season, absolutely shot up draft boards last spring. A guy with 3+ pitches in the fastball, the slider, and the changeup. Didn't pitch after being drafted last year. They brought him in slow. High school pitchers often you'll see that with. Got that fastball up to 97 miles an hour. As a 19-year-old, definitely a positive for him. Really good slider. I like that pitch a lot. I've watched him pitch here and there, just doing some draft stuff last year. I think 3 really good pitches. Definitely a guy to watch. I would guess he'll likely start at low A this season and go up to high A. Still only 19 years old. Definitely, I think, a guy that could be a solid starter at the major league level, but he won't be up in the majors for a while. The top 3 guys in the system, all very young, and we'll see that trend continue here with the infield prospects. A next top 3 here in the infield that have never played in the minor leagues collectively. Cobb Hightower, another dude on the all-name team, 19 years old, 55 hit tool, 55 power, and then 50 across the board after that. The number 9 prospect in the system. 3rd round pick last year out of high school in North Carolina. Played a bit in a bridge league last season, which is kind of the step between the draft and the minor leagues. Just an area where some guys can go to play if they're not going to play in the minors. And he was great last year. Watched a couple of the highlights from those games. I really liked the swing. Not a ton to pull from him yet. A guy that I would expect to be in low A this season, but love the swing from Cobb Hightower and a good shortstop. Another big time international guy here in David Coronel. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Big time tool set out of him. The hit, power, run, field, and arm all over 50, similar to Hightower. I think a better runner than him though at shortstop. Gonna make a Dominican Summer League debut this summer. I would guess stateside in 2026. Definitely a few hit tool questions, but the pop is really solid for him, and I think a really high floor defender. Cale Fountain, another guy on the all-name team here for the Padres. Big time frame at third base, 60 power, definitely a projectable power hitter. 5th round pick last season, didn't play after the draft and had Tommy John surgery in October. Not sure how that's going to affect him going into the season. But again, another high school guy, a guy I wouldn't expect to debut for a while, but definitely some really solid tools. Rosman Verdugo, a 19-year-old, a guy that played in high A last season, but did really struggle there with the bat. Definitely a bit of a hit tool issue for him, only a 40 grade there. The fielding and arm is a positive, I think, for him, but not a ton of power in the bat. Still really young, though, getting up to high A, I think, is a positive. And then Romeo Sanabria, really good offensively last season. 288, 396, 427 slash line across 3 levels last season and really made a big rise in their minor league system. 22 years old. Definitely needs to continue hitting because he doesn't have a big-time defensive profile, pretty much a first base only. But I think really good numbers from him, a guy to watch in the minor leagues this year. Not super deep in the outfield area as well, but a couple of guys here that are pretty solid. Terso Arnelis got up to the majors last year, but never played an official game. Some really good hitting tools here, a 50 hit and a 55 power. Not the greatest defender in the world. Really good numbers last season in AAA, 297, 367, 497, 24 doubles, 23 homers. I think he's going to compete to make it up to the majors this year, and I would guess you're going to see him at some point. If you watched any college baseball last season, you heard the name Kavaris Taylor, an absolute dog at Tennessee. Big time outfielder, really solid power grades, really good runner, and really solid defensively. Didn't debut last season after being drafted in the 4th round. Definitely has some questions on his hit tool, but I think the power can cover that up a little bit. Needs to cut the strikeout rate to really be a solid prospect, but I think a good one. Kai Roberts, 4 years at Utah and some really solid numbers there. Padres drafted him in the 7th round. Solid low A showing from him last season, 414 on base percentage, so I do like that a lot. The hit tool and power tool aren't great for him. His calling card is really as a runner. Big time base stealer and somebody that's really going to generate a lot of value in that area. Definitely some pretty good tools here, but there's some things that are really hard to cover up. And then Sean Barnett, a legit two-way guy in college that did get drafted, a Division II guy, 11th round pick in 2024. Seems like is going to be an outfielder, but does have some solid pitches if he ever decides to go that route. Big time bat speed for Barnett and had some pretty solid college stats, but only played at the D2 level. Going to be an interesting one to watch moving forward. Humberto Cruz is the number 3 prospect in the system, a plus fastball, a plus changeup, and really solid control. The biggest pitcher in the 2024 international class for the Padres. Big time upside for Cruz, has only pitched in the complex league so far, will go to low A, I would assume, at some point this year. Braden Nett, a guy that didn't pitch in college at all, but did in the Appalachian League in 2021, and the Padres brought him in. Got up to Double A last year and had some pretty solid numbers. A really good fastball and slider for him. Could definitely develop that changeup a bit more to make himself into more of a 3-2-ish starter. But as of right now, I think definitely a number 4 in the majors at some point. I would guess he wouldn't be up this season, but 2026 probably. Luiz Arraez here, another Double A guy that had a pretty solid year. 102 strikeouts in 96 innings for him. Big time fastball, curveball guy. That fastball sit at about 93, 94. Very young guy to be in Double A. Another guy that the Padres really like and are pushing through the system. I love Boston Bateman. 6'8". He was a draft pick last year. 52nd overall. Big time over slot pick for the Padres. Didn't pitch last season in the minor leagues. Obviously coming over as a high school pitcher. But the fastball, the curveball, and I believe the slider are really plus pitches for him. Hopefully will stick as a starter long term. If he can't, definitely could be a solid reliever. And then Isaiah Lowe, definitely a relief prospect, but a guy with 3 really solid pitches, the fastball, slider, and changeup. Like him a lot to be a long-term projectable reliever. Go over a Baseball America projected lineup and rotation really quickly, and we'll get started with the lineup. A lot of major league guys here in Cronenworth, Bogaerts, Machado, Tatis, Merrill, and Arraez. Majority of them are going to be older by the time 2028 rolls around though. So some of these prospects could definitely come up and spell them. Guys like Ethan Salas, Leo DeVries, Cobb Hightower could definitely make their major league debuts by this year, but I'm not 100% certain on Salas. He needs that bat to come forward. 22 years old only in 2028 as well. I do like DeVries, a lot of really good numbers. Need to see what he does at a higher level, but I think there's a ton there. And then Cobb Hightower still has yet to play in the minors, so it's really tough to project him to be up here in 2028. Think you can definitely dream on an outfield of Merrill, Tatis, and Hightower though, with DeVries at short and Salas at catcher. This projected rotation still has Cease and Darvish in it alongside Randy Vasquez and Johnny Brito. Didn't talk about Brito a ton in this video, but he was another prospect brought over in that Yankee Soto trade. A guy that I think is going to get some innings at the major league level, but I don't think has the high-end potential that people once saw of him in a prospect. I'm a big-time fan of Cash Mayfield, though. I think he'll definitely make the majors at some point. Cease will be a really good pitcher. I think his stuff really carries over as well. Yu Darvish would be 41 years old. Not certain that we're going to get a ton out of him in 2028. And Randy Vasquez definitely, I think, needs to develop a little bit into more of a full-time deception, not walking guys type of pitcher. Although I think there's definitely something there in a lot of that. I love Jeremiah Estrada, though, as the long-term closer for this team. I think his stuff is outrageous. He does such a good job at missing bats. Love Estrada as a pitcher. I don't know if you can say super hyped about this rotation. Think they definitely need to do some work in the draft, in the pitching department in the next couple of years, but there's definitely some things to dream on here. I'll get into just some quick final thoughts on what I think about this Padres organization after going through this entire thing. Absolutely love the lineup. I think there's a ton there. The high-end talent is undeniable on this team. Tatis, Machado, Bogaerts, Jackson Merrill, etc. in that lineup. Cease, King in the rotation, Darvish whenever he comes back. And then the bullpen, Suarez, Estrada, Jason Adam. There's some of the better players in baseball on this roster. It's really just a depth issue. One thing about the Padres, they're going to have to stay healthy to be really successful this year. If we see guys like Tatis miss time again with an injury, or God forbid, guys like Merrill or Machado or Bogaerts, again, I guess, even miss some time, that lineup is going to get thin really quickly. Same could be said about the rotation. You're already looking at a guy who hasn't pitched as a starter yet in the majors and Randy Vasquez as your 4 and 5. Really needs some of this depth to step up. Guys like Kyle Hart, Johnny Brito in the rotation, and some Eguy Rosario maybe in the lineup for this team to really hit the peak of their potential. But I think they have a formula. And I think if they get into October, they're as dangerous as anybody in the entire league. Just because of that bullpen, the top-end hitters, that's really what is the biggest piece of this organization, and I think that's where they need to be the best. Your best guys got to be the best guys for this Padres team to be the best possible version of themselves. Love some of the prospects. Leo Vries, I'm a big fan of. Expect some of the pitchers to take major steps this year as well. I think that could be a long-term plus for the Padres. This was a really fun one. Really love some of the guys in this organization. I'm a huge fan of Tatis, love Jackson Merrill. This was a breakdown on the 2025 San Diego Padres and their organization.